Okay, so I'm back on these door hinges on the 1946 Dodge, and you can see I welded the plugs in and had to add a little bit of rod because it was cracking on me, but I managed to get it to penetrate pretty good, at least into the sheet metal of this piece, if not into the back of the nut plate in the back of it. And I did the same thing down below here. You can see on this side, for some reason, I managed to get 3 broken bolts. On the other side, I haven't been so unlucky. I've been doing better. So I'll show you the other side. So I wanted to point out that you can't get a wrench on here, and I actually had to grind away at the edge of this bolt just so I could get the wrench onto the bolt, because otherwise there's no way to get that bolt out of there. I tried getting a regular open-end wrench on it, but there's a little bit of a lip right here, and with the door open you can't get an open-end wrench in this way. So I don't know how in the world anybody got these bolts out of here. So I managed, I'm going to be able to get this one out, and then hopefully with a socket I can take that one out, since I just ground it just a little bit off the corner of it. And maybe on this side I won't have to actually fix any of the nut plates. So now I want to show you what's going on with the actual hinges themselves. You can see a giant gap right there between the pin and the hinge itself, and there's actually a little knurl on here, and it's supposed to press into that hole, which is never going to happen because the hole's too big. And when they tried to push the pin in, they galled it into the door. So this is the way I got it. So what I'm going to end up doing with this, since I can't get it out, I don't know, I'll try it once again with that little clamp I have that it pushes the pin out from underneath. But if it doesn't come out, what I'll end up doing is I'll end up cutting this off flush, grinding it, drilling with an 1/8 inch drill, then I'll drill it with a 1/4 inch drill, and then I'll go down with a flat bottom 1/4 inch drill, or you could use a 2 flute milling cutter. You can buy a 2 flute milling cutter from like the Master Car or somewhere, and you drill down into it till you're at this level, and that way you can just yank the whole door right off with the piece still stuck inside of this other part of the hinge. And I'll show you how to get that off next. Okay, so I bought this tool, and it comes with these different pins, and you can see I pushed on it so hard I actually bent that pin. These things get really galled. The holes are steel, there's no bushing. It's a steel pin. One thing I found out on one of the doors was, at one time or another, maybe somebody changed the pin or something. One pin's hardened, one pin's not hardened. The hardened pin actually comes out a little bit easier. Once you grind a flat end on it and you push on it with this, it'll come out pretty good and it doesn't mushroom. But the problem you have is you got this area here where I guess you're supposed to put oil, and when you push on a soft pin like this, you can see that the head gets swelled out, and it swells out inside of here, and then it doesn't move because it acts like a rivet. So you can see what I did was I drilled these from both sides until I got it small enough that I could yank it out of the hinge. Then what I did was I went back and I soaked this whole entire thing in penetrating fluid. I had this filled up, and I was able then to go back and drill this out to where I got a 1/4 inch screw in here. So what that did was, now I got past this little area where it was mushrooming out, and I could push it through with this clamp, and that worked pretty well. But yeah, if you get a hardened pin, it works pretty well. You don't have any problems, but the soft ones, they're miserable. So what I'm going to do with these, I don't have the parts yet, but I'm going to cut this off down to this area and remove this material from both ends, so it'll be a little shorter. And then I'm going to drill through here with probably a 64th smaller than 3/8 of an inch, and then I'm going to ream it out with a 3/8 reamer, and I'm going to press in a bushing. I have bushings, they're only half this distance long. I'm going to push them in from each end. I got those from McMaster Car, and then I bought I got that coming too, a reamer that's 278. These are like 276, 277. This is the new pin I got from this place. And once I ream it out, then it'll fit like this, but I won't have steel on steel, because that's what the problem is. Nobody ever greases their door hinges or puts oil in their door hinges. So I want to put a bronze bushing in there. And the other thing is that this knurl it's supposed to press fit into the top of the hinge. And usually what happens is this gets stuck in here, it gets galled, and then the knurl just chews away at the top of the hinge until your whole door's loose. And then when you close your door, it doesn't line up. So I'm going to take some flange bushings. I also got a MasterCard. I'll show you when I get those. And I'm going to press them up inside of the outside part of the hinge. And I'm going to press the other one down inside of it. So there'll be a bronze flange on either side of this. And then I have some shim washers, and I'll be able to shim it and jack the door up and down to align it, to get it wherever I want it. And I also have some 7mm drill rod, and that drill rod is going to go down through here and through the hinge, and I won't have to use these pins until I'm done. And that way I can align everything and keep pulling the rod in and out, keep putting shims in, get everything perfect, get the whole vehicle painted, and when I'm done painting, then push these in and get rid of my drill rods. So hopefully that'll all work. So that worked pretty good, cutting that little cutout on the side of the bolt, so I had clearance to get a socket on here, and then both of them came out. So I was really fortunate that none of these bolts stripped on this side, so I don't have to worry about these nut plates. The next thing I did was I pressed out this pin, which was stuck, and turns out it's got threads on it, like it was maybe a carriage bolt that somebody, I don't know, turned into a door pin. So that's probably why the door was sagging. So this door pin right here, you can see it's really hard. I can barely get anything off of it with this file. In fact, it's stolen my file. So I'm going to have to grind it flat, because when I try to put the clamp on here to push this out, it just wants to fall off to the side because it's got a point on it. So I'm going to grind it flat first. Just want to point out that these are riveted on, so in order for me to replace the hinges, I have to drill all these out. I'd have to, maybe bolt them in or re-rivet them in. I don't know what you do. So I really don't want to mess with this hinge. I want to leave this part on because it's actually lined up pretty well. So now I'm going to use this press or clamp, or whatever you want to call it. I put the shortest pin in here, and I'm going to line it up with the top of this. Try to line it up with the top of it. This problem is it tries to jump around on you. So you can hear it's pushing it out now. So this thing's working pretty good for me this time. It seems like if you get a hardened pin, it works well, and if you get a soft pin, it doesn't work. If you get a soft pin, then you have to drill it out from both sides, and then pull the whole entire thing off, and drill it out a little more until you're past that area where it's oiled at, which is right there. Once you get the pin cut down past this little recess, then you can push it out. So you have to keep jumping up in size on these pins until you get the thing fully pressed out. So I just used a short one. Now I'm going to use this next bigger one. So I just wanted to point out that I put a weld all the way along here, and I also welded the nut plate onto the little piece of sheet metal that the nut plate's behind. So it's sort of stiff, because whenever I put the door on, I don't want this bouncing all over the place. It's mounted inside there somewhere, but it's kind of just floating a little bit. I'm hoping it's where it needs to be in order to get the door in place. If not, I may have to cut that weld off. So after I ground the welds off, I bolted this on so that it was pushed over that way. Then I have this transfer punch, and I pushed it over to the side and smacked myself a couple nice center punch marks. And that'll give me a location for my drill. Now I can drill it straight through, right through the hinge, so I know I got my holes in the correct place. Okay, so I had told you that I was going to transfer holes through this piece on here. And what I found out was that I have this transfer punch, and I rounded off the end of it, which was very surprising. And I found that the nut plate in back of here is hardened tool steel. And so when I welded these plugs in here, I got a crack in part of it. That kind of told me that something was going on. And then when this rounded off, I knew the steel was really hard. So I had to use this torch down here and I had to heat this up until this whole thing was glowing red hot. So I had this whole plate glowing red hot, and then I backed it off. I had this small tip on here. I heated it up, probably took me 5 minutes to heat it up, and then I just backed off about every song on the radio until I listened to about 3 songs, and I was out here. And so it basically had a good half an hour, if not an hour, to cool down, and that caused it to get soft again and become annealed. So that made it so I could work on it. And then what I did was I repunched it with this, and then I ran this center drill in the hole, and then went through with this little small drill, because this material is still really hard. It's probably as hard as an average fastener. Then I went with all 3 of these drills. I went up through a 1/4 inch, and then 9/32, and then I countersunk it and I tapped it. So yeah, unless you've done this stuff before, I don't know if I'd attempt it this way. I think if I was to do this all over again, I think I'd probably drill through here, through these plates, especially if you have your car painted. I'd either drill through there or maybe take a die grinder and grind that out to be the size of the OD of a helicoil, and then drill one of these out with the root size, the tap size you need to tap it for a helicoil. And then I take a helicoil and stick it through here and put it right in there and put some Loctite on it. And make sure that you countersink it so it's flush, because if you have anything sticking up at all, you can't get the door hinge back in here because there's almost no room. So either way, it's a bit of a difficult job, but I would say the helicoil is probably the easiest way now that I've already done this. This will work, and it worked out good for me. But well, that's about it for this one. I'll show you on the next video after I get this all welded back on and get the doors lined up.